The summer before high school, I was eager to find a job so I could save some money for school. My grandma told me about a new neighbor looking for someone to babysit her children for 3 days. The aunt would take over at night once she got home from work, but during the day, I'd be in charge. The parents needed to travel back to the state they were originally from to handle the sale of their old home. They offered me extra payment since my grandma had been the first to welcome them to the neighborhood. I figured it would be an easy gig. The day came, and when I arrived at their house, the parents were in a rush to catch their flight. The mom didn't even have time to properly introduce the kids to me. She just handed me a list of instructions. Feed the children, reheat meals she'd already prepared, and make sure they were taken care of. "They're upstairs sleeping," she said quickly, then rushed out the door. As I began prepping their breakfast, cereal from the pantry, I realized something strange. She hadn't told me how many kids they had. Assuming it was just 2, I grabbed 2 bowls and set them on the table. About 30 minutes later, 3 kids came down the stairs. I was caught off guard, but figured the mom had simply forgotten to mention the third. They were all close in age, 1 or 2 years apart, with the youngest around 3. The kids were polite, easygoing, and didn't give me any trouble. After breakfast, I played with them and let them watch TV. By 1 p.m., I asked them to take a nap. I brought them upstairs to their bedroom and tucked them into bed. That's when I noticed it, a closet door slightly ajar. As I moved closer, a chill crawled up my spine. Inside the closet, crouched behind some hanging clothes, was a little girl. She looked around 5 years old, with dark hair framing her pale face. Startled, I knelt down and gently asked, "Hey, what are you doing in there?" She didn't respond. Her expression was blank, her eyes wide. I thought she must be scared because her parents had left, so I tried to coax her out, but she wouldn't move. Concerned, I hurried to the kitchen and brought back some food. I placed a plate on a small table near the closet, hoping she'd eat. "You can come out whenever you're ready," I said softly, then went back to check on the other kids, who were already fast asleep. When I returned to the closet a few minutes later, the plate of food was untouched, and the girl was gone. The closet was empty. Confused, I searched the room, but there was no sign of her. I even went downstairs, thinking she might have slipped past me, but she wasn't there either. When the aunt arrived that evening, I told her about the girl I had seen. Her face paled, and she whispered, "There's only 3 kids." My heart raced as I stammered. "But I saw her. She was hiding in the closet." The aunt's voice trembled. "That's impossible. There was a 4th child, but she passed away years ago." The room seemed to close in on me, the air growing cold. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. But deep down I knew. I hadn't imagined her. I had seen the ghost of their lost daughter, and she had been watching the entire time from the shadows of the closet. It was a typical weeknight when I decided to browse online for a babysitting job. After about 30 minutes of scrolling through listings, I stumbled across one that caught my attention. The pay was double the usual rate, far better than anything I'd seen so far. Intrigued, I quickly texted the woman who had posted it and told her I was interested. She responded almost instantly, thanking me and saying she needed someone urgently for her 2 children, a 4-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. She sent me pictures of them, and they looked adorable, sweet, innocent faces that made the job seem like a breeze. We chatted for a bit, and after confirming the details, I packed my things and headed to the address she had provided. By the time I arrived, it was already past 6 p.m. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the street in a dim, eerie twilight. I approached the house, which looked old but well kept from the outside. I knocked on the door and waited. 5 minutes passed. No answer. I knocked again, a little harder this time. Still nothing. Confused, I pulled out my phone and called the woman. It rang several times before going to voicemail. I left a message, assuming she might have stepped out for a moment. But after standing there for another few minutes, it hit me that the house looked odd. There were no lights on inside. No signs of life. It didn't make sense. She had told me she would be there, waiting for me before she left for the evening. So why did the house look empty? As I stood there in the growing darkness, a chill ran down my spine. Something felt wrong. Just as I was about to try calling again, I noticed a man walking down the sidewalk. I waved him over and asked if he knew the family living in the house. His response froze the blood in my veins. "That place," he said, pointing to the house behind me. "No one's lived there in months. It's been for sale for a while now." My breath caught in my throat. "Are you sure?" I stammered, pulling out my phone and showing him the address I'd been given. He glanced at the screen, nodded, and confirmed it was indeed the right house. "But that's impossible," I muttered. "I was just talking to her. I got pictures of the kids. There was no way this was some sort of mix-up." Then I noticed him. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a man standing under a streetlight a few houses down. He had a cigarette between his fingers, the ember glowing in the dim light. He wasn't doing much, just smoking and watching me. The uneasy feeling in my stomach twisted into full-blown dread. The man didn't move, but I could feel his gaze on me, heavy and unsettling. He took a long drag from his cigarette, his eyes never leaving me. Something was very wrong. I felt it in my bones. Instinct kicked in. I turned to the passerby I had asked earlier, suddenly desperate for company. "Do you mind walking with me to the highway?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Thankfully, he agreed without hesitation. Together, we started walking away from the house, my heart racing with every step. As we made our way down the street, I glanced back. The man under the streetlight was still there, still smoking, still watching. But as we got further away, he started moving too. Slowly at first, then with a deliberate stride as he followed us. He wasn't rushing, but his presence was unmistakable. I didn't wait to see what he was planning. By the time we reached the highway, my heart was hammering in my chest. I thanked the passerby and quickly ducked into a nearby convenience store, not wanting to stay out in the open. I stood there for a few minutes, catching my breath, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I pulled it out, I saw a text from the woman who had posted the job. "Are you still coming?" It read. I deleted her number immediately. It wasn't until later that I realized how close I had come to something far worse. The woman's text, the house, the man under the streetlight, it was all a trap. And if I had stayed just a little longer, I don't know what would have happened to me, but I'm certain it wouldn't have been good. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when my cousin Ray called, asking if I could babysit her friend Jane's 6-year-old daughter, Bridget. Since I had no plans for the day, I agreed. Babysitting wasn't new to me. I'd looked after my nieces and neighbors' kids plenty of times before. Plus, how hard could it be? I had the address within minutes, packed my bag, and made my way there. When I arrived at Jane's house, she greeted me warmly, a frazzled yet friendly woman in her mid-30s. "Thanks so much for doing this on short notice," she said, motioning me inside. The house was cozy, filled with soft furniture and framed photos on the walls. Bridget was sitting on the floor, a smile as wide as the sun, surrounded by dolls and stuffed animals. Jane quickly gave me a rundown. Feed her a light snack, let her play with her toys, and make sure she's in bed for a nap before evening. Easy enough, I thought. Before leaving, Jane turned back to me, her face growing serious. "One more thing," she said. "Don't let anyone in. Keep the doors locked at all times." There was an odd edge in her voice that sent a small chill down my spine, but I brushed it off, just a protective mother. She waved goodbye and drove off, leaving me and Bridget alone in the house. For the next couple of hours, everything was peaceful. Bridget and I played with her dolls, laughing as she told me stories about her stuffed animals going on adventures. Eventually, her energy faded, and she started yawning. I carried her to her room, tucked her into bed, and tidied up the toys in the living room. That's when I heard it, a faint sound coming from downstairs. I froze, ears straining. It was the doorknob. It rattled like someone was trying to turn it. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to think logically. Maybe it was the wind? Maybe Jane had forgotten something and returned without telling me? I crept to the front door, my footsteps light on the wooden floor. I checked the screen door, it was locked. Everything was in place. Slowly, I leaned toward the peephole, holding my breath. Through the tiny fisheye lens, I saw him, a man. He was standing just beyond the door, his face hidden under a hood. My stomach twisted as I watched him try the knob again, this time more forcefully. I took a deep breath and asked, "Who is it?" The man's head snapped up, and he replied in a voice too sweet for the situation, "I'm Jane's brother. She sent me to pick something up." My gut told me something was off. Jane had never mentioned a brother. I bit my lip, my hands shaking slightly as I kept my voice steady. "I'm sorry, but Jane didn't tell me about anyone coming. I can't let you in." There was silence. For a long moment, I thought maybe he had left, but then the rattling started again, harder this time. "I need to get inside," he said, his tone no longer sweet, but cold and urgent. "Just open the door." "No," I said, my voice trembling. "You can't come in." What happened next made my blood run cold. He slammed against the door with such force that the whole frame shook. I gasped, stumbling backward. The door thudded again, harder, as if it was about to splinter off its hinges. I ran to the couch, adrenaline pumping through my veins, and shoved it in front of the door. Boom! Another hit. The door was holding, but barely. My mind raced. Bridget. I had to protect her. My hands fumbled for my phone, and I dialed 911. My heart pounding so loudly I could hardly hear the operator on the other end. "There's someone trying to break into the house," I whispered frantically, glancing toward the door. "Please send help." The operator assured me that officers were on their way, but the man outside wasn't stopping. The door buckled under another massive thud, and I could hear him grunting with effort as he pounded on the frame. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I grabbed a chair and added it to the barricade. I could feel his anger through the door. The pounding grew more frenzied, more violent, and I was sure any second now it would break. Just when I thought it was over, I heard the distant wail of sirens. The man must have heard them too because the pounding stopped. Everything fell silent. I stood there, heart racing, gripping the edge of the couch, waiting for the next sound. Moments later, red and blue lights flickered through the window. The police had arrived. When they entered the house, the man was gone, vanished as quickly as he had appeared. They never found him. Even now, years later, I still wonder what would have happened if I had opened that door